Hey everyone, Evan Kirstel. Happy Hump Day. It's Wednesday. We made it. And I have some great guests here talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, the world of SMEs and technology, in particular, the CPaaS opportunity for communication services within SMEs. I have a great couple of co hosts here. Robert, how are you?
Doing awesome. Glad to be on hump day. So it's all downhill from here, right?
It's all downhill. And EJ from Speech Logics, our guest today. How are you, EJ?
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, once again, also happy to be here at Wednesday. So the weekend
Well,
can't come fast enough.
it can't. And let's start with some introductions. As always, Robert, tell us about your fascinating background and the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance, the series we're doing right now.
Absolutely. So some quick background on me. I've been in the industry for a little bit, both on the consumer or customer side as well as on the provider side. So I'm excited to talk about this subject today, just from the perspective of actually buying and trying to implement software at companies. We've got some good talking points, and it fits right in with what we're talking about at the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance, which is how do we make all of these tools that we've built usable, applicable, buyable by the industry. And we're seeing a lot of really good stuff. Excited to talk with EJ today from Speech Logics and how we're making that work in the industry.
Fantastic. Well, it's going to be a great conversation. And EJ, introduce yourself, a little bit about your background and Speech Logics. Tell us who you guys are.
Thank you. Yeah, so also excited to be here. So my background, I've been a provider in the industry for just under 20 years, and then recently moving into the role as a director of technology at the manufacturer level. So I bring sort of the years and years and years of experience specifically in the SMB market, which makes this a pretty exciting and actually really natural topic for me to talk about. Speech Logics is a company. It's been in existence actually for a number of years, but in its current iteration for the last 4 or 5 years, in creating an all-in-one platform to address operators' needs, sort of all in one go. The objective being to make something that's really quick and easy to install, so that we can bring people to profitability as quickly as possible, and building something that's modular, so that and I'll get into this in a little bit, but so that we're really delivering what matters to our providers' customers. So we're one up the chain this time. So it's really strange not to be dealing with the end customer at every moment, but again, keeping in mind what that is to be that person. So
Awesome.
thank
And
you
one
very
of
much
your
again for
running,
having me.
yeah, we're excited to have you
Mhm.
as part of the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance. And we're going to dive into this, but give us a taste right up front of the range of advanced communication services that you guys deliver to businesses. What kind of things do you
Thank
offer
you.
to your
Yeah, no, for
customers?
sure. So we deal with UCaaS, of course, so Unified Communications as a Service. So again, we are providing to operators, and the operators are selling it as their
Okay.
UCaaS solution. We are not hosting it in our cloud at all. They're hosting it in their cloud, so we enable them to do that. Also, of course, SIP trunking, ATAs, adapters, anything that sort of fits the bill as far as enabling. And like I say, I'll get into that in a little bit, but enabling those customers, whether they be legacy or current UCaaS customers, to have their communications in the cloud. We have a CCaaS offering as well, so your contact center as a service, and that we're pretty proud of, and it brings omni-channel at a really affordable price. So our entire focus is this customer segment, is this cost conscious SME segment. So we believe that we bring something that brings only the features that are necessary to that customer group.
Well,
And like I
really
say, we'll
interesting.
talk about
You have a
that.
lot of real world experience we want to draw on here in dealing with SMEs. But Robert, before we get to that, how do you define the SME market? I mean, there are different definitions size wise. I've heard, 10 or 50 to 500 or 1,000. Of course, in this world of remote work, that all kind of gets thrown out the door with work from home and remote work. I've even heard SMEs could go into the thousands and still be considered an SME by some vendors. Is there a way to really characterize this market given how vast it is globally?
That's a really great question. So what I've done in the past, and every business that you talk to does have a little bit of a different definition, and they tailor it more towards the types of segments that they're going after. I like to align it because it really helps you go in and do research and quantify the size of the market, is align it with some of the government related numbers, right? Because then you can go in and crunch data against the government databases.
Yes, the government, they're here to help.
Yes, they are actually here to help, right? But in terms of sizes, on the small side, it could be anywhere from 10 to 50 to 100 employees. And then on the mid-size, we will typically look at 100 to 500 employees on the mid-size. And, when you're a small provider, you think, wow, 500 employees, that's much bigger than I am. That must be a large enterprise. But in the grand scheme of things, that 100 to 500 employee range is kind of a sweet spot. And the awesome thing out there for providers is there's so many companies that you can go after in that size. Right now, as you start to get 500, 750, 1,000 and above, you're getting into a bit of a different buying scenario, right? Because you're getting buying committees and you're starting to get more decision makers involved. So that starts to get you into some of those bigger company type of scenarios that really change how you're going to be selling and building your software.
Yeah, and EJ, does that gel with what you see in serving real customers? I mean, what sort of company sizes do you support from the low end to your sweet spot in the SME space?
Yeah, no, that's completely true. So I think statistically, they say in Canada, they say 97%, 97.7%, I think it is, of companies fit in the SMB
Wow.
space. And in the United States, though, 99%. So
Wow.
even more so. But then of those, to keep in mind that something like only 20% of that number actually accounts for, more than 10 employees. So, when we talk about communications, presumably you're communicating with somebody, maybe other than your customer. So there's like an internal communications need. So I mean, you're really looking likely at 10 or more people. From my experience, I've found that the 50, somewhere around 50 to 100, is the easiest to sell to. Certainly with the techniques and the skills that the companies that I belong to have brought to the table. And anything sort of 100 to 500, it gets awkward. Like you said, Robert, like they're not quite enterprise, but they've got a lot of the same markings as enterprise customers do. Some of them play like they're larger than they are, and it's a little, it can even be frustrating at times. And then other ones are actually, their practices are very old school. They're very startup. And so, although they might be huge, they kind of fly by the seat of their pants. So it's hard to figure out, who you're selling to in that sort of range.
Yeah, and typically those SMEs can be, many of them, very unsophisticated when it comes to technology. They don't have a CTO or a CIO or a CSO or a buying committee. It's often owner, CEO led, and a lot of the decisions can be ad hoc, and it's kind of a chaotic world, right, Robert? I mean, I own a small business of a few people, and I'm the chaos and chief officer here. So when it comes to buying decisions and how to deploy tech, it's just try and buy. It's all over the map. What does the landscape look like from your standpoint? Is it as disorganized and fragmented as we imagine, or maybe not as much?
It can be, right? And that's the beauty of working as providers is we need to be we need to be flexible, and really think from the perspective of our customer. So a lot of us are working in those same mid-sized enterprises, and what I like to challenge my teams with is, well, how do we buy software? How do we go and make
Mm.
decisions? And if we think about it from that perspective, it helps put a little bit of a point on, oh yeah, this is how I go out and find things, or this is how something has been brought to my attention. And it helps you cut through, who are the people that you need to answer questions for, and who are the people that need to be brought to the table. But it can definitely be chaotic, and that's where the great salespeople come in, right? You're helping cut through the noise and identify the decision makers and bring them to the table. So yeah, no. If it was easy, we'd all be winning at this, right? So no easy, hard and fast rules on that, but be
Yeah, and very, very
flexible.
price sensitive,
Yeah.
very, challenging environment, lots of legacy in some cases. And I mean, EJ, the pandemic was kind of a tidal wave for SMEs who all of a sudden had to adopt remote working, adopted video, adopted all kinds of tools that they had never really leveraged in the past. And it kind of brought a decade's worth of change in a couple of years. What did you see for your SME clients, their buying trends and behaviors over this, quite disruptive period? What any surprises out there on the SME buyers of communication services?
No surprises. What it did was it pushed a lot of those people who were probably already kind of mentally there along the journey. It pushed them to a decision point. By making forcing some urgency.
Mhm.
I felt for them because a lot of them were midway through that process, and this really pushed them to do something that they weren't necessarily 100% ready for. The funny irony probably was that the smaller companies were able to go quicker than those medium-sized companies, because of course they don't have hundreds of people. So it wasn't a big deal to move them, let's say, into the cloud, to make things work for them. I felt for them because I don't like ever having to buy something because I'm forced to buy it. But at the same time, I guess it's an opportunity for the seller to be empathetic and be honest, and be a trusted advisor, and try and at least make that selling experience as much as it might have been at gunpoint, to make a decision, make it as informed as possible. So yeah, that's what we saw. I'm just trying to think. The other thing, of course, that you see is there were a lot of technologies used to plug the gap.
Mm.
So, like you said, they're a really price sensitive segment. So people immediately reached out to anything that they could get for free. And so there was, there were a lot of cases where we would get into the customer and find out that they had literally more than one free trial on the go at a time, that they had adopted some free technologies. They weren't really necessarily all that secure because they are free, and there's there's data extrapolation, and that's how they keep them free. So we have to recognize that the SME customer is just like the big customer. They have the same concerns. They have security concerns. They get phished. They have data security concerns for their own customers. They have the same problems as big companies do. They just don't have the budget to deal with it, and they don't have the people to deal with it. So what do you do to help those is what you've got to ask yourself. So that's what we found. I think I took a lot of pride during the pandemic time, and the more customers I could see in a day, the better. 12-hour days, but it was all for serving customers. It really wasn't to be profitable. I'm still not sure if we made a killing or not. I don't think so. But it was really to help them streamline and their technologies, and decide on something that was really the best thing for them. It wasn't going to compromise them too much.
Yeah, great point. And Robert, I mean, your typical SME purchased communications technology from a local dealer. Maybe they had a key system, they had some old PBX they were writing off, or maybe they bought, Centrex from their local telco. Pretty basic stuff. And I think what a lot of them learned through the pandemic is that, those older systems cannot embrace this new world of customer service, customer experience, advanced communication services. I mean, isn't that the promise of CPaaS, is getting rid of those legacy, boat anchors they had, and really embracing a whole suite of new applications for productivity and efficiency and customer service and sales and beyond, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the promise as well as the challenge of CPaaS. For years, we as an industry have been putting out things that are, here's a toolkit. Here's all these awesome things that you can do with this toolkit, but then it's kind of crickets after we do that, and we expect people to build things on top of it and deliver solutions. And when you think about the SME, which is where we see a lot of the opportunity for the CPaaS market over the coming decade, they don't have the time or resources necessarily to go out there and build these things, right? And a couple of data points. I've talked to a lot of smaller businesses over the last couple of years, and they're swamped just trying to get the day-to-day stuff, right? So as EJ mentioned, COVID really forced companies to change the way they were doing business. But unless you get that forcing event, the companies are just trying to tread water on a day-to-day basis, keep operations going, and they're not out there looking for the next solution. So that there's a challenge for us as providers to make sure that we're getting our message out in front of these companies that aren't necessarily searching for that. So we've got to make sure we're hitting them in the right places, but we've also got to make sure that we're delivering technology and solutions that are not just, hey, here's what you can do and go build it, but it's actually a fully packaged solution that if I'm a small business, I can go and implement it quickly, and it can have an immediate impact on my business, right? And I don't have to go find an IT person, which I don't have anyways, to go implement these things. The other data point, Gartner just held their symposium here in Denver, right down the road from me, their marketing symposium. And one of the key data points that came out was 75% of buyers don't actually want to talk to a salesperson. Right. So that's another challenge for us as providers, is they're not looking for solutions. And when they are, they don't actually want to talk to a salesperson. So we need to make sure that our solution speaks to them and that we're putting the information out there to help them actually make a decision on their own. And that, when I think about the opportunity with SMEs and the opportunity with CPaaS, is we need to make sure that we're connecting more with those end buyer needs and making it available and accessible to them so that they don't necessarily need to talk to a salesperson.
Yeah, great point. And EJ, I mean, what are some of the immediate opportunities you find with new customers? Are there specific use cases or applications or low-hanging fruit that's like a no-brainer right off the bat? And then, how do you describe the sales process and the journey of working with your SME customers?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the obvious low-hanging fruit, like the thing we're seeing a fair amount of. Remember, too, we are selling to providers, but again, we're selling to providers and educating providers on what works for their market.
So it's white label, as we call it.
Right, exactly, white label, yeah. What we're finding, though, is the same thing that I found as a provider myself. So it's not really surprising; it's consistent. That's why I say it probably won't be surprising to anybody. The real value, I think, I mean, as a human, at a human level as well as the technology level, the real value is holding their hand and walking them through that sort of transformation. So it's if they have a legacy PBX, it's at this moment perhaps allowing them to keep the legacy PBX, but getting comfortable with the monthly fees of SIP trunks coming into it, or analog terminal adapters, or PRI over SIP, or any of that sort of stuff. So basically bringing legacy technology over the top, where we can start as providers. We can actually, because our costs are lower, we can make more money. We can bundle it in with data services a lot of the time. So it's a win-win for everybody. We're seeing that being a real major factor. The other thing I'd comment on is something I don't think is true about a lot of companies in the industry, but something that we're steering towards is our own company. And that is we're finding that I think people are overwhelmed with not just the number of products that are out there, but a lot of the features that the products do. So you've got this PBX right now sitting in your office. It's been there for 20 years. It runs well. Won't even say the manufacturer name, but we all know
it has a big N on it,
right? So, right, yeah, I'm in Canada, so of course it does. And so these black phones on everybody's desk, and they work really well, and you pay for them time and time again, so they owe you nothing. It's pretty hard now to go out of pocket, $25 or something per person for something that's really cool, but it's not what we're used to, and it does 50 things that we don't need it to do. So what we're finding when we design a solution, and we're sort of, that's what makes us, sort of CPaaS aligned, if you will, versus a normal UCaaS platform, is we do customize the solution that goes out to the customer, our customer being the operator. So we're finding that what they're going for, what they're biting at, is actually really simple communication platform. It's not something that actually does everything, because the SME customer figured out during COVID that, I'll throw some names out there, but the WhatsApp, for example, did a really good job at what they need for their texting. And heck, they don't want something else in the way. In fact, if you give them one more product, it's yet one more channel for you to be able to say, I didn't get your message. So it actually confuses things. It doesn't help things to try and centralize that. Or maybe they have Teams or something. There are a lot of great products out there that are good for sending messages back and forth, and emoticons and files. So they don't necessarily want their communications platform to do that for them. So we are finding that the real gold is in simplicity, is in speaking the customer's language and working with what they've got. There's a time and a place for adding on the other products and aligning everything into one, but that's really a problem right now of the larger companies. They can afford to do that. They can afford to adopt one big platform across the board. The SME, we're finding, just wants something simple and inexpensive, consequently, and just fulfilling the functions that they want it to fulfill, which, like I say, we're finding by and large is quite simply communications. They just want something that's an amazing phone, and let's keep it simple. So.
And a great experience for the caller. I mean, we've all called into businesses and gotten, an old voicemail box or ring no answer, or we get into this terrible IVR tree and we can't leave a text message. We can't communicate except with voice. And so, yeah, where do you decide which features to develop for those next wave of customers? How, is it driven by their requests, or do you sort of poll your service provider customers and tell and ask them what SMEs are asking for? How do you come up with the next great feature or functionalities on the platform?
That's also a good question. Well, we do a lot of four-legged sales, so we are there in front of customers a lot. It helps our channel partners. It helps them to sort of understand the techniques that we use and understand the product better. Also helps them sell it better. Let's be honest. It's not exactly the greatest model, for everybody. I mean, there comes a point where you need to be able to sort of automate that and hand that off as a manufacturer. But it works extremely well, and it helps to inform our platform. So that's a big part of it. A big part of it too is if there is an issue that gets escalated to support, it gives us an opportunity to dive into an individual tenant and sort of see what they're using. So when you find out, for example, that they're not using much of the chat, or that they've never shared a file on your platform, it's probably not a bad thing. It just means they're sharing files in some other way, but it means that it's really not that important. So if developing that feature and keeping that feature going is costing you money, and you're passing that cost down to your provider, and the provider's passing that cost on to the customer, why not just remove that particular feature for a large selection of customers? It lowers your liability, so it brings the price down to them, and it's something that they weren't using anyway. So we're finding that the market's sort of feeding each thing that we look at. The market, for example, just to give you a concrete example, about a year ago or a year and a half ago, it was very clear that omnichannel was a big deal. We had already looked at omnichannel with regards to SMS, for example, which is used, by and large in North America. WhatsApp is used hugely in Europe and the Arab Peninsula, Africa, et cetera, a lot of the markets that we're in. So that made some sense. And then, of course, like any company, we look into all the other providers, and we've got, I think, 5 or 6 different integrations going right now. And yet everybody that you sell that product to uses one at best. So they use the WhatsApp channel, or they use the SMS channel, or maybe, one of a few other channels, but that's it. So again, people want simple. I think they're pining for simple. Our life is quite complicated right now. So that's what we're finding in the market, and we're helping, allowing the market to drive where we go with our product, what we develop in next, and what we, spend less attention on.
Wonderful thoughts. Yeah.
I'd love to hop back to, you mentioned you guys are really simplifying and providing specific things, one from a cost perspective, but for things that customers actually use, and go back to a couple of anecdotes that I've seen over the last 6 months, traveling in Europe. I've done a lot of reservations through a couple of online systems for apartments, and all of those interactions end up coming through WhatsApp scheduling. Things like, when are you going to pick up your keys? When are you going to check out? And things like that. And it's so fluid and it's so seamless. And I know these are smaller businesses on the other side that have implemented a really simple solution. And there's several providers that we've got in the alliance as members that are offering these types of solutions. But it's great to see those types of things implemented by these small, mid-sized enterprises. So Europe, we've seen a lot of WhatsApp and facilitating those conversations, so you don't have to hop on a phone call, or you don't have to go through a bunch of complex things. And then in the US, similarly, like you've mentioned, SMS for scheduling appointments, asking quick questions and things like that. What are some of the other features that you guys are seeing SMEs pick up on your platform, and that your providers are having success with on that front?
Good question. I'm trying to think. You see a bit of video for sure, but video used not in the conventional way that we expect it, like this, or like a Zoom conference. But we are seeing, I'd say, a small amount. I believe it's going to grow. I actually think it's a huge opportunity. But video from the consumer level. So for example, the use case, I'm shopping for something, and I can, using a QR code, I can scan a QR code and begin a conversation with an agent that way. We see that we have a customer who's a large library, nationally owned library in a country, and they have sort of podiums, kiosks, placed at the entrance of the library. So rather than an information desk at every single library, they have like 2 people and a whole bunch of kiosks. So, but you're not, because that particular culture especially deals better like this, and don't we all, honestly, deals better like this. They can walk up and tap that, and they actually get video interaction with an agent who's, sitting there. It sounds silly, like, why do you need that? But until you use it, you'd be really surprised. There's a human touch to it. That's honestly, I believe, a very valid replacement of a real receptionist, because you can really make pleasantries with this person. It's a real live conversation. Make pleasantries with them, ask them where the such and such is. They can give you information on the screen right in front of them, and then you sort of tap and hang up, and you make your merry way. When was the last time you were in a shopping mall and you had to find a store? For me, sadly, it was 2 weeks ago. I hate shopping malls. And, thank God for the map. So I'm not putting it down completely, but the map itself is even kind of confusing. Where am I on here? What level is that particular store on? And they've done everything, including spinning the animation of the map and showing you the escalators to kind of show you where you're going. But to have somebody give you directions would be just so much better, to be able to tap in an information eye. and have somebody come up. And so we're seeing a bit of that called for by customers. Like I said, it's using an existing technology, but using it in, I'd say, in more advanced way, such that we get that sort of human interaction. Maybe we get back to talking to each other again. Like you said, there's a time and place for text, including booking my next oil change and confirming my dentist appointment. And that's fantastic. Why on earth would we, use our voices for that? Nobody wants that. But there is a time to connect with people. And that's interesting to me. It's cool that we're getting beyond, in the Maslow's hierarchy of technology. I don't think he talked about tech, but in the hierarchy of technology, we're up in that self-realization sort of part of the triangle now. So let's do something cool. We're beyond sustenance. Let's do something cool. And I think people are getting there now.
Yeah, I think it highlights a few trends that are interesting. One is mobile first. I mean, the beauty of WhatsApp, it's mobile. It's a beautiful, easy to use application. So it's sort of mobile first all the time. And also, the in-store retail experience is radically changed with the adoption of, like you said, QR codes. We all learned what those were and how to use them during the pandemic.
Yeah.
We learned about, picking up your order from the in-store in the in-store parking lot and getting notifications and location services kind of into the mix. And so we've all become educated to the use cases on mobile kind of first applications. So super interesting. In the few minutes we have, let's turn a little bit to support, because I mean, it's very easy to sign up for communication services these days. You can go to Google Workspace, you can go to Microsoft Teams, you can get all these advanced services as an individual or as a small business entity. But then good luck getting support from Google or Facebook at WhatsApp or Microsoft. Isn't that a big barrier for some of these advanced services by SMEs? I mean, who do you call at Microsoft when you have a support challenge? And is that a big differentiator for SpeechLogix and its partners?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is. And the funny part is, so now, at SpeechLogix, I'm selling, I guess that's what you'd say. I'm selling now to the operators. So I'm selling to, in a lot of cases, the big, it's the big bad telco who I used to make my lunch on in my past life, because I wasn't that big, I wasn't that big telco, and I was the real human interface, the guy who you could actually call. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think at the end of the day, it's just the same as in the selling experience. We need to be really good at holding the customer's hand. And so it's an opportunity, I think, to talk, again, for us to talk to operators and really let them make a difference. Now, backing up for a second, when we talk about technology, the technology of cloud technologies is actually fairly good. So it generally doesn't go down, and none of them do. I mean, ours is not better than others. They're all fairly secure right now, and we're watching them like a hawk. All of us are. So if any bug or any security vulnerability is located, we're all proactively moving on that. So I guess what I'm saying is we're setting the stage. We're automatically giving that person a fairly good experience and a fairly solid product to work with. So their support experience then can probably be spent on providing the extra value to customers who want to do it yourself, giving the extra hand-holding rather than chasing the bugs of the products of yesteryear. So I think that, again, sort of that, the hierarchy comment, even when it comes to support, we're in that upper threshold where things aren't dying all the time. Like, do you notice this is the last time your computer even crashed? It doesn't happen like it did in 1997. It's, things, they just operate better. So we have an opportunity now, rather than just going, all right, well, now I can have more customers because I don't need to support as much. Maybe you offer them better support, and maybe those support opportunities are opportunities to upsell into other things as well. So yeah, the SME support model is totally different than enterprise in the respect that you're talking to somebody who, like Robert said in the beginning, barely has the time to get a coffee. they're so busy. They don't have time to shop things out. They don't have time to Google things and try and fix them. They just need to be able to call. And I believe that the people they're calling, the operators out there, have a good product, whatever it might be. I believe that they've got a pretty good product, and that they've probably got a pretty decent escalation path of their own. So if anything, support is in a better place than it's ever been before when you look at CPaaS and UCaaS and CCaaS and so forth.
Fantastic.
Robert, would you agree with that, or is that a fair assessment, or am I being overly gushingly glowing about?
No, I think it's a great point, and Evan, it's a great question, because when we look at the opportunity in CPaaS in general, we're talking about SMEs right now and the growth that we're going to see in that market as we start to deliver services specifically targeted and easily consumable by them. But it touches on the other piece, which is who are those companies already doing business with today? Well, it's their telco provider, right? And it's the other companies that they buy communications from. And I think it's an excellent opportunity when we think about how to sell, how to support those things. It's those communications providers that already have the relationship with the customer. They already know how to support them. They're doing it on a day-to-day basis. There's a huge opportunity in the market for those communications providers to grow their business and serve more of the SME market that they're already serving today by bringing these services in. So when you ask the question around support, SpeechLogix and other companies that are providing the technology provide some level of support, but there's a natural mechanism there already with the communications provider. So we're seeing a lot of convergence on supporting and selling in the market, and that's going to really help propel growth in CPaaS here over the rest of this decade. So it was a great question, and I think it also speaks to the opportunity on the communications provider side.
Well,
it's a chance to change your business. It's a chance to, and when you think about CPaaS or even UCaaS solutions, they need to be customized in the first place. So the selling experience has set the stage for real listening and real caring and real customization. So the support experience needs to reflect that. It almost automatically raises the bar for the support organization. So yeah, that's really the opportunity that's out there is for those same providers who we're supporting simple things like, I don't mean to oversimplify it, but stable things like analog lines and data circuits and so forth, to really engage with their customer more often and on a more human level, and again really sort of drive this to a more relationship-based experience than it has been in the past, right? So it is a good question for sure.
Well, on that question and that comment, I think we'll round up our discussion today. Really great discussion. So many anecdotes and interesting insights, especially from SpeechLogix. We're really pleased to have you here, EJ. Before we go, what are you up to this summer, personally, professionally, over the next month or two? What are you looking forward to as we head into the summer months, or hopefully summer? I don't know. It doesn't feel like summer this year. It's a strange summer.
One.
Yeah.
It's been a weird one. Yeah. We've had a lot of warm days here, though, so far up in middle, I guess, southern Ontario, southern Ontario for me. You know what? Honestly, back and forth to ball diamonds, and I have a hobby farm, so got a lot of animals out there to take care of and things to do that are extracurricular. And professionally, we've got 2 or 3 new providers just recently. Really interesting use cases, really interesting markets. So I'm excited to implement those guys. It's a fairly short implementation by platform standards. It's like a 3-month implementation, but that's 3 3 hardworking months. So times 2 or 3. So really looking forward to onboarding them and seeing what they bring to the table and what challenges they bring. So yeah, that's me for the summer. How about you, Robert?
We just we got our travel out of the way early, so we've got a pretty busy second half of the year on the Alliance side. We've got our first annual and really first global CPaaS show coming up in Amsterdam in mid-September. We've got a lot of really cool CPaaS showcase challenges with our partners coming up. So I had to make sure the family got the travel bug out of the way early so that we can get back to work here over the next few months.
Yeah, and Colorado is glorious in the summer. Talk about fabulous place to be. So
Yeah.
enjoy it. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for your time and attention. And until next time, which will be next week, look forward to the next session. Bye-bye, everyone.
Excellent.
Bye, guys.